Hello, welcome to the SWN Spotlight Show. I'm your host, Mark Jeffrey. Got a special guest on the Spotlight Show today, Sam Friedberg, Solarize with Sam. That's how you're known, right, Sam?
Yes, it is.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into solar.
Sure. So my background's pretty unique compared to other folks that are in solar in Arizona. My background's in electrical engineering. So I got my bachelor's from MIT in electrical engineering, went on to get a master's degree at USC. So I have a lot of technical expertise there. And I've also been in real estate investing in the Phoenix area for the last 15 plus years. So I'm able to really merge those two elements of my background to look at it both from a technical standpoint, but also from a standpoint of it really as an investment for a homeowner on their home.
Now, a lot of people have run into your typical, solar sales rep. What's different about your business model?
My approach is completely different than that. So first of all, I've never knocked a door or made a cold call. It's definitely not my style to do that. If people want to talk to me about solar, they get in touch with me. And the folks that typically come door knocking, their training is all about sales and about how to get in the door and how to make a sale. Very little of their training is how to actually design a system to the customer's best benefit. Whereas with me, I'm aware of the sales training that they get, but I very proudly do the opposite of what they're told in their training. And it's all about how to best design the system that's needed for that specific client in a very customized way for them.
Now, our electric bill for most people is kind of a drain. It's a monthly drain. How can I turn that into a kind of a long-term asset?
Sure. Well, the difference is very similar to the concept of owning a home versus renting a home. So for all the same reasons that people who've become homeowners made that transition from renter to owner, it's the similar mindset in terms of renting your electricity from the utility company versus owning it. So I'm really much more of a fan of people owning their solar systems rather than leasing them. Whether they own them through financing or whether they pay cash, some people go each way. But once you own the mechanism of generation, now that's an asset for you, and it adds value to the home, which we'll talk about later in terms of how I go about making sure that that actually does happen for people, because it should happen, even though it's not something that automatically happens without intention behind it.
So we're in Arizona, obviously. Beautiful view of Scottsdale behind us. So how is solar different here in Arizona, Sam, than in other parts of the country?
Great question. So there's things about solar that make it simpler here. The biggest part of it is that we just get a whole lot of sunshine. So in terms of the sunniest cities on Earth, Yuma, Arizona is number one and Phoenix is number two. And then right behind us are some cities in Egypt in the Sahara Desert that are behind Phoenix in terms of the amount of sun that we get. So we do get a lot of sun here. What makes it different than other places in the U.S. that may also get sun is really the way that the utility companies in Arizona treat solar, where there are nuances to each of them, and it's important to take those things into account. It's not necessarily that they're better or worse in Arizona, but they're not as simple as it may be, so that if someone's trying to design or sell a system for a, quote, generic utility anywhere USA, that's not going to work as an approach for Arizona solar.
Well, you mentioned the different electric providers we have in Arizona, specifically the Valley. So we have APS, we have SRP.
That's right.
How is each one in relation to solar?
Good question. So they don't make it simple for you. So APS is a little bit simpler in that they have a fixed buyback rate, meaning that when someone's generating more energy from their solar than they're using, you get to sell that back for a fixed rate, and I'll talk about the timing of that a little bit later as well. And also they have a 3-hour on-peak window in the afternoon and evenings from 4 to 7 p.m. So someone with less expertise can get closer to a good solution with APS than they can with SRP. SRP has 4 different solar rate plans that are different than the rate plans for people without solar. And each of them has their pluses and their minuses to them, their give and take. And the key is to really get a good alignment between the solar system design, the homeowner's usage patterns, and the specific rate plan with SRP that we're choosing, so that all of those things line up. And when that happens, then clients end up very happy. And if it doesn't happen, often because a sales rep either didn't know better or they just wanted to make a sale, then people end up unhappy if their usage and their plan that they're on is not a good combination with the system that's designed for them. So doing that strategically is very important.
Now, you mentioned timing issues. What do you mean by timing issues with APS?
Good question. So there's a few of them. So number one is every year, usually at the end of August, beginning of September, APS has a cutoff where anyone who gets solar before that cutoff is at one buyback rate, and anyone who gets solar after that cutoff is going to be at a lower buyback rate. Typically, it goes down by 10% a year. Whatever buyback rate you get when your solar application goes into APS, you are grandfathered in at that higher rate for the next 10 years. So we do have a cutoff coming up relatively soon here for people who want to get the higher buyback rate before the cutoff date at the end of August this year. So not a whole lot of time for that, but there still is time for people to get their applications in. It's just if it's going to be a 10-year difference in the buyback rate you get, might as well get the higher amount.
Right. Well, okay, so that's APS. What about timing issues with SRP?
A good question there. So SRP, and this is making things more complex, but if you account for it, it's fine. They have two rate plan changes that are announced. One is coming up in November 2025, and then a further one out in November of 2029. So in November of 2025, one major change that they're making, not just for solar, but for everyone, is with their monthly service fee. So right now, people without solar, the monthly service fee on their SRP bills is $20. For people with solar, the monthly service fee is $32 currently. In November of 2025, they're going to make it a level $30 for everyone, whether you have solar or whether you don't. And that's for a typical mid to large house. Much larger houses could have a monthly service fee of $40 a month. And if somebody's in a condo or a townhouse, then it could be $20 a month. But for a typical single-family home, it's going to be $30 monthly service fee across the board come November 2025. So that eliminates the $12 monthly, quote, penalty in monthly service fee for people with solar. The bigger change coming in November 2029, and they had several board meetings about this and hearings, and they released a 225-page document with their projected changes to this. The biggest difference is going to be the on-peak hours are going to change and move to later. So we'll talk about on-peak and off-peak and kind of why that's important with solar. But currently in the summer with SRP, the on-peak hours are weekdays from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. After November of 2029, they're going to change to either 6 to 9 p.m. or 5 to 10 p.m. And taking that into account really affects the design that someone would choose with solar, specifically in terms of battery storage and the importance of having that in the future moving forward.
Now, I've heard a lot of solar reps say, hey, solar, it's a no-brainer. You push back on that a little bit. Why do you push back on that?
Well, it's not a no-brainer in that even though it can be very beneficial, it requires significant brains and analysis to figure out the right thing for someone. You can't just go put up any old system designed any old way and expect it to work out. It's not that solar creates a certain amount of ROI however you do it. How you do it is very important. There's a lot of strategy in that. So when I'm looking at designing a system for a client, usually before I'll even meet them, I want to get a good amount of information about their electricity usage. And I look at it in great detail, not just a matter of how much their monthly bill is, but I'll even look at their usage patterns on a daily and even an hourly basis at different times of the year to make sure that the system's designed properly for their daily usage and even specifically their daily on-peak usage, because that's a big part of the strategy is making sure that we have the right amount of solar and battery storage to help them avoid buying as much on-peak energy from the utility company as possible. That's what gets people the most bang for their buck these days. But you can't get there just by looking at someone's monthly usage or their monthly bill. You really need to go and look at their usage in a lot more detail before. So I like to make sure I get that information and look at it. Even before I'll go meet with a client, I like to show up prepared and have my homework done.
Okay, well, following up on that, what's your approach? Why is it different than a standard solar sales pitch?
Well, first thing is most sales people in solar don't know anything about what I had just mentioned in terms of understanding the daily and hourly usage and how you design a system for that. They all go by kind of the the 2 weeks training, general rule of thumb. You hear about a certain size monthly bill. Okay, I'll just look at a chart and pick a certain system for this. And that leads to people being quite disappointed with the results unless they just happen to get lucky and fall into that neat little box. But my observation of most people's energy usage is it usually doesn't fall into a box that way. So another big difference is most solar sales people work for one specific solar company. I do not. I am an independent consultant, and I have multiple different solar install companies who are competing for me to use them for my clients' projects. And there is no one best solar company or one best solar installer for everyone's project. It really depends, number one, on what the client needs for their home. And then once we figure out a general design of what they need, then I will usually go and shop that through 2 or 3 different solar company providers that have that equipment or are able to provide it to see where the best deal for someone can be once we have a good understanding of what their system should look like and what they should have.
Okay, well, it says Solarize with Sam right on your shirt. I love that. But in general, how do folks find you? How do they come across you?
Good question. It's all on word of mouth in one way or another. Sometimes it's directly from an existing client that refers a friend, refers a family member. I've had clients who have individually referred 6 new clients to me as well. Several others who have referred 3, 4, 5. But it's also from people hearing about me in community Facebook groups. Anytime questions come up about that, I'm usually someone that's recommended that people get in touch with. And I always like to make sure I'm adding some element of education to it. There's a whole lot of salespeople that just keep saying, pick me, call me, I'll direct message you. I don't direct message anybody cold. And I want to make sure people know that my style is not to be aggressive at all. When people want to have a conversation with me, that's when they reach out. And then another place that I get a lot of referrals from, I do classes for realtors on solar in real estate and investing. And there's a very wide range of knowledge that realtors have or don't have about solar. And a lot of times realtors will come to a class like that. They'll appreciate my approach. They'll appreciate my understanding of how solar plays into real estate. And I get a whole lot of referrals from realtors who have been to classes that I've been to, that I've taught.
Now, there's a lot of myths and misconceptions in the area of solar. Is there one misconception in particular that irritates you?
Good question. Well, probably the biggest one is that people think that all solar is the same and has the same return on investment to it. It's not a matter of if somebody got a better deal or a better design system that gets them a better return. That doesn't mean that someone else is going to get the same thing just by putting any old system up on their house. So there is no one single number for ROI or payback period or any of the math that relates to everyone. There are some homes that are a better fit for solar than others. There are plenty of designs that are either better or worse designs for someone's situation. And then, of course, they have to get a good deal in terms of what they're getting for what they're paying for it.
Now, if I'm interested in energy independence, how does a battery factor into that?
So batteries store energy, they don't generate energy. And when someone has solar and batteries together, what you're able to do is generate energy through your solar and store it in the battery to use at a strategic time. So there's actually quite a bit of strategy about battery settings, about when they should charge, when they should discharge. But what happens is if you have sufficient battery storage, you really are not at the mercy of the utility company's whims in terms of how they change their rate plans in the future, because however they change their rate plans, you're able to redirect when your own self-generated energy is used to avoid buying it from the utility at the time that costs the most to buy it. And if utilities change their buybacks in the future and you have batteries, you can actually, there's ways you can adjust battery settings to avoid selling energy back at low rates if utility companies change their buyback rates to lower numbers in the future. You have an element of insulation from that with battery storage as well.
Now, in the news lately, I've noticed there's some changes in the tax credits or something coming up at the end of the year. Could you explain that to us, please?
Yes, and this is a very big deal in terms of the economics for people going solar. So my style in designing a system is I'm a bang for your buck guy. I want to make sure that for any money that people are spending, that they're getting a good return on the money that they're spending for it. A big part of that is for owned systems. Currently, there is a federal tax credit in place of 30% of the system cost that comes back to the homeowner as a dollar for dollar reduction in their tax liability. And certain people have to make sure they're eligible for that and that they have to pay enough income tax or have enough overall liability to be able to recover the tax credit in 1 year. But if someone is working and paying taxes, they will get that tax credit back over time. Now, those tax credits originally were supposed to stay in place until 2032. However, with the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act on July 4th, they are ending the residential tax credits after December 31st of this year, 2025. So it's important for people to get their systems completed before December 31st in order to get that 30% tax credit, because that can make a very big difference in terms of how economically beneficial or viable solar is for someone. There are a lot of people now where solar can be very economically beneficial, but if the tax credits weren't there, it would turn into more of a luxury purchase where it's somewhat offset by savings, but not necessarily enough to justify the cost if the tax credits were eliminated or if somebody was too late for them. So important to get things going to beat that deadline.
Now, there's an EV boom, it's across the country, but specifically here in Arizona. Does the EV boom have an effect on energy costs in general?
Yeah, the EV boom and overall demand definitely does. So basic supply and demand and the need of the utility companies to keep spending money on more infrastructure, more generation. Not just EVs, but also the proliferation of large data centers around Arizona are really sucking up a whole lot of power. And we've been relatively lucky in Arizona so far of not having a lot of power outages compared to some other places in the country. But they have started to happen more frequently. And if the grid is under strain because of a high demand of electricity, both from residences and EVs and data centers, if the utility companies have to prioritize whose power stays on and whose power stays off, most homeowners are realizing it's probably not going to be their power that stays on. They're probably going to keep the data centers going, and the homeowners are going to be the ones that have the outages.
So in your opinion, what's the single smartest move an Arizona homeowner can make?
Well, single smartest move is probably to get an assessment and understand the options that you have with solar, understand if your situation can be a good fit for it. And I do free analyses for people all the time. And then if it is, then we want to make sure we have the time to design your system intelligently and get the process going in time for you to maximize the incentives. Number one, for the federal tax credits, and secondly, for people who are in APS territory to hopefully get their projects underway before the cutoff date of the lower buyback rate of energy, so they can still get grandfathered at the higher buyback rate currently.
How does having solar affect the value of my home?
Good question. So in a rational world, if someone has solar on their home and they own the system and their electric bill is very small, let's say their electric bill with solar might be $50 a month on average. If a similar home without solar has an electric bill of $300 a month or $400 a month, it's obvious that someone who's looking to buy that home would be willing to pay more for a house that has a $50 a month electric bill versus one that has a $300 or $400 a month electric bill if everything else were equal about the home. So there is a value and a benefit of having that. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that if someone puts solar on their house and they go to sell it down the road, that they're always going to get more money for that sale. So number one, leased solar systems generally do not add value to a home because the homeowner doesn't own the equipment. The company that's leasing to them is the one that owns the equipment. If solar is financed, there is still an advantage to having solar on that house. It could either turn out where it's best to have the solar loan paid off as part of the sale or ahead of the sale. Occasionally, it might make sense to have the new buyer assume the loan for the solar, and the ones I deal with are assumable. But the biggest benefit comes when the system is owned and paid off, because then it becomes a major upgrade to the house. And one of the things that I make sure of in advance is that we have the proper documentation about the system so that when it comes time for resale, the realtors know, the buyers know, the appraisers know what it is, what that system is and what that's doing, so that they can take that into account. One of the main things that I teach in the classes that I do for realtors for solar and real estate is to make sure you have as much documentation as possible about the system going into that sale. Because if someone just looks up on a roof and says, oh, I see some solar panels up there, and they don't know anything about it, it's really hard for them to know what kind of benefit or value that's bringing.
Now, we know that solar tech is constantly changing. You're on the cutting edge of that. I know you follow it. Is there something in particular that truly excites you?
Well, the biggest change that's happened in solar tech happened about a year ago, and that was really in battery technology advancement. So the solar panels themselves really have not changed that much in the last 8 to 10 years. You know, they retain their efficiency a little bit better than they did before. So good panels now are going to be warranted for 25 or 30 years. And typically they'll be generating as much power 25 years in the future, 85% of what their original power was. Excellent panels could be even above 90% of their original efficiency 25 years out into the future. So that part's about as good as it's going to get. What's happened with batteries in the last year is the costs have come down while the output power has gone up. So it used to be where back in before the middle of 2024, most of my clients that got solar were not getting batteries with their systems. About 80% were not getting batteries then. Now, more like 90% are getting batteries as part of their solar systems. And it's not that I saw the light necessarily. It's a matter of the numbers have changed and the technology has changed to where now the batteries are more beneficial and you actually do get a better bang for your buck on getting them. And that's the solution that tends to be the best economic outcome for people is some combination of battery storage plus solar. And strategically, when we do it that way, you can often get a smaller solar system and accomplish the same results if you have battery storage to include in the system design and strategy.
So if somebody has solar and they didn't get it from you, but they're thinking maybe I need a battery, is that something you can help them with regardless if you set it up?
It is. In fact, I have an appointment like that later today with somebody who bought a house that has existing solar that wants to put batteries on it. The type of batteries that someone can get or should get with existing solar is going to depend on the specific equipment that's already there on the house. So not all batteries are compatible with all solar equipment. You want to make sure to get batteries that are compatible with the existing equipment that's there, because most people don't want anyone having to go up on their roof and take all the solar panels off and change all the stuff that's under the solar panels in order to connect batteries. We'd much rather be able to do it just by adding batteries on ground level on the wall, either outside or inside someone's garage, without having to go back and change the original system or do a lot of work on it.
Okay, so what do you say to somebody who says, look, my energy bill's $150 or less a month. Do I really need solar?
Financially, do they need it? No. Do they want it? Maybe. If they want it, maybe we'll come up with a good solution for them. You can't save money that you're not already spending. So if someone's bills are super low, there's not a whole lot of room to save. Generally, the bigger someone's bills are, the more room there is for savings and for economics. But some people have different motivators besides, huge savings. If someone's bill is low and they like the idea of energy independence, if it's important to them to have protection in the case of grid outages, that's another value. And that's something that I tell people I can't tell someone how much it's worth to them to have outage protection. That's a very personal choice for someone to make. And if someone feels that it's important, then it can absolutely make sense for them to get, even if they're not saving a whole bunch of money, but now they have outage protection and they're paying a comparable amount, then that could work out to be a good deal for someone. But if someone doesn't place a personal value on having outage protection and their bill is under $150 a month, they don't need it. They need to come up with their own reason why they might want it. And if so, we'll come up with the most sensible solution for them.
Is there something a homeowner can do to check out their roof, and they're not an expert, but make a determination if it's solar ready?
There are a few things. So first thing is you don't ever want to put solar panels on a roof that's already old and close to needing replacement. So that's important because if ever someone did need to do roof work, say that's going to happen in 3 years or 5 years because the roof is already old, then they're going to have to pay for labor costs of removing the solar panels to have the roof work done and just put the panels back up. And that's not cheap to do. The going rate currently is about $200 per panel for solar. So there are a lot of projects that I do when people have older roofs where we will bundle a new roof and solar together as part of the same project. And if they're financing it, we can wrap it all into the same financing so they can not only get solar with no money down, but they also can not have any money down for their roof either in that situation. So the roof is one important thing as far as the age. And then as far as sun exposure goes, that's important as well. Obviously, you don't want to put solar panels where they're going to get a lot of shade from trees or from other homes that are next door. If someone has a one-story house and they're next door to a two-story house on each side, they might get some shade on their roof. If someone's going to have shade from big trees, we want to make sure the shade's not going to go where we would want to put the solar panels. It kind of burns me up when I'm driving around neighborhoods and I see solar panels that someone else did installed under someone's trees. And I'm thinking, this person's definitely not going to be happy with it. And shame on the person who sold it to them. They never should have put solar in that spot.
So you and I, before the show started, were talking about, well, you're telling me some of your solar stories. Is there one in particular you want to share with us?
Well, here's a recent one that came up. So I have a friend who is a mortgage broker, and he's also a solar client. And there was a purchase transaction that he was working on with a realtor where there was owned solar that was on the house. And this other person had a solar loan that was there. And they wanted me to assess the solar loan and the balance and the payments and what that system was likely saving those people. And thankfully, in this case, the original owners had already paid down a good amount of principal off of that loan. They had paid down about a third of it. But what happened is, so I did an assessment for it, but I looked at what the agreement was for the home that was being sold, and it just so happens that they had an identical system to my friend who was asking me to do the analysis. It was the same number of panels, same equipment, same installer. The only difference is that the contract price that my friend got, that I got for him, was about $10,000 less than the same contract that he was having me analyze for them. So this was and the contracts were signed about 2 months apart in 2023. So the timing was the same, installer was the same, equipment was the same, but the deal I got for them was about $10,000 better. And I didn't know it until just last month.
So how do people get a hold of you if they want to find out more?
Good question. So a lot of people find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Solarize with Sam, or you can just search Solarize with Sam on Facebook. My website, www.solarizewithsam.com. Both of those places have links to my calendar, where you can see my calendar availability and schedule what's called a discovery call. So the first step I like to have in the process with someone is to have a brief phone call, usually about 15 minutes, to go over just some basics, make sure that I look at the house from satellite images, get some information about people's energy usage, make sure that we see if solar is even a promising fit for their home. So we talked about roof exposure as far as the not having shade. We also want to make sure that the direction of the roof is facing in favorable directions. We want to have usually exposure to the south and exposure to the west are the best. So I'll look at those things. And then from that information, I'll be able to come prepared when I meet somebody for a full consultation, which we'll schedule afterwards. And I can either do those consultations in-home or I can do them over Zoom. Usually about a third of my full consultations are done over Zoom these days, just on convenience for the individual homeowner. But it all starts with a discovery phone call that people can go and book either from my calendar link that they'll find on Facebook or from my website. And there's other places that people can enter their information on my website if they want to have me reach out to them.
Well, it's Solarize with Sam. It's funny because before the show started, I asked ChatGPT, tell me everything about Solarize with Sam, and it had all your information. So there's a lot of ways to find you.
That's good. A lot of folks out there are using that these days. I will say I have not gotten on the AI bandwagon myself. I still like to use my own brain in the process for it.
That's an MIT guy for you.
But I definitely know that people are going that way. It's wonderful if people are able to learn about me from ChatGPT or however they do. I like it when people reach out and they already know something about me because they know why they're speaking to me rather than whoever else they might come across in the solar industry.
Sam Friedberg, Solarize with Sam. Great having you on the show. I'd like to thank everybody for watching the SWN Spotlight show. You have so many choices with your time. Decided to spend it with Sam and I, and that means a lot to us. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.